the footage of burning of a tractor at the India Gate on September 28, 2020. The tractor was burned during the protest of Punjab Youth Congress workers near India Gate in New Delhi against the new farm law enacted by the Narendra Modi government. Now, numerous protests have happened in various states in India, especially in the northern states of Punjab and Haryana, against the new farm bill. Now, what is the farm bill and why is the entire opposition up in arms against the BJP government? Let's analyze the pros and cons of the bill and try to understand the factors that led the Modi government to implement this key reform. What was the problems of the earlier system? There were numerous problems. Problem number 1. The farmers were compulsorily required to sell their produce in the local mandis. Now, government fixed the prices of 30 commodities, which is called as the minimum support price. In theory, the idea of minimum support price looks very attractive, as it says that the poor farmers will get a minimum price for his produce. Hence, all common man like you and me, whenever we hear about a concept like the minimum support price, we immediately fell in love with that concept. We automatically assume that MSP will ensure that the poor farmers will get a minimum price for his produce and no one will exploit the farmers. Hence, all of us love the MSP. But what's the real story? Do the farmers always used to get the MSP for his produce? The answer is a clear no. During the harvest season, there is a sharp reduction in agricultural prices as the supply exceeds the demand. The farmer wants to get the MSP, but due to mismatch in supply and demand, the traders and the middlemen used to negotiate pretty hard with the poor farmers for prices far below the MSP. As per one study, almost 60% of the farmers sold their produce below the MSP, 22% at the MSP, and 18% at greater than MSP. So MSP was good in theory, but not in practice. Problem number 2. How did the government used to decide the MSP? All state government used to set up an agricultural produce marketing committee. These APMCs used to levy fees, cess, and many other charges on the poor farmers in the local mandis. Now imagine the situation of the farmers. He cannot enter into any contract directly with the buyers. He was forced to sell the produce to the mandis, and the state government is adding cess and various other charges just to boost up the state revenue. Problem number 3. The middlemen in the mandis used to form cartels. Their main job was to prevent exploitation of farmers. Instead, they themselves acted as a local middleman and used to charge hefty amount from the poor farmers. An extreme case that surfaced in 2016 was of Devidas Maruti Parvane. This farmer from Vadgaon Rasai, a village in Pune district, supplied 1 ton of onions at the local mandi under the Pune APMC. He got 1 rupees and 50 paisa per kilo for his onions. That was itself very low. But even on top of that amount, the middleman took their cut money. A scrutiny of Parvane's trade slip revealed his total revenue from the sale of 1 ton of onion at rupees 1,523 only. The total cuts even on this negligible amount added to rupees 1,522. That included various commissions such as labor charges, filling in bags charges, loading charges, transport charges, and so on. At the end of the day, Parvane only received 1 rupee. This kind of situation is the main reason why hundreds of farmers commit suicide every year in India. The Modi government has passed altogether 3 bills that are collectively known as the Farm Bill 2020. All the 3 bills aim to deregulate the agricultural market mechanism, which is tightly controlled by traders and big producers. So what are the key benefits of this bill? There are plenty of good benefits. Benefit number 1. This bill allows the farmers to sell their produce outside the mandis. So farmers can now sell their produce anywhere and to anyone in India. This is also known as contract farming, where the farmers can enter into a direct agreement with any buyer to sell the produce at a price agreed by both the parties. Benefit number 2. This bill prohibits state governments from levying any kind of fees, cess or any other charges on the poor farmers. Benefit number 3. This bill proposes an electronic trading platform for direct and online trading of the produce. So global companies can register in the electronic platform and deal directly with the farmers. They can purchase commodities from the farmers and pay them directly via the electronic platform. Now let's discuss the main focus of the reform, which is contract farming. So what is contract farming? As part of this reform, farmers can enter into a direct agreement with a buyer to sell the produce at a predetermined price. He can make an agreement for a minimum duration of one cropping season. The maximum duration can be of 5 years. The buyer can inspect the quality of the produce as per the agreement. The entire contract will be exempted from any state acts, thereby leaving no room for the states to impose any kind of cess, fees or taxes. Now what if there is any dispute in this agreement? The new law provides for a 3-level dispute settlement mechanism. First, the conciliation board comprising representatives of both the parties. Second, subdivisional magistrate. And third, the appellate authority to settle any dispute. So this reform aims to liberalize the agricultural sector just as Manmohan Singh liberalized the overall Indian economy in 1991. In order to attract global investment in the agro sector, government also amended the Essential Commodities Act. Now, what is the Essential Commodities Act? The government implemented this act in 1955 in order to stop hoarding of agricultural produce by any farmer or any middleman. Also, it was a big weapon in the hand of the government to control any sudden price rise in commodities such as rice, wheat, edible oil, etc. This act was handy in the 1950s and 60s when India was still a net importer of food. During those dark periods of our country, farmers and middlemen used to hoard food grains just to jack up the prices. But now India has become a net exporter of agro-commodities. India now ranks second in terms of global food production and is the world's largest producer of many commodities. But still today, our poor farmers are unable to get a fair price for his produce, as most of the time he has to sell his produce at a price that is far lower than the MSP. So if we have to attract private investment in this sector, we need to assure the private players that the government will not play any role in fixing the prices of the agricultural commodities. Instead, the government will allow the demand and supply in the market to determine the prices. Until and unless there is any emergency at hand, such as a war, a pandemic like COVID, a flood or a famine, government will keep itself out of the entire pricing game. Hence, the bill removes cereals, pulses, oilseeds, edible oils, onions and potatoes from the list of essential commodities. As you can see, the reform in the Essential Commodity Act is a big step to attract global investment in the agricultural sector. So if this bill has the possibility to bring a transformation in the agro sector, why is the opposition parties opposing this bill? Let's talk about the politics part of the game. It is observed that the protests are concentrated in the states of Punjab, Haryana and Madhya Pradesh. This is because it is in these states that farmers rely on the MSP and they have a strong market system based on the local mandis. In fact, Bihar, Kerala and Manipur do not even follow these mandi systems. In India, the state governments have the power to regulate their agricultural markets. Hence, different states have different approaches toward this. In Haryana, more than 75% of the wheat and paddy is purchased by the government at MSP rates, whereas this number is even higher in Punjab at 85%. The Punjab government charges a 6% mandi tax apart from a 2.5% fees for maintaining the APMCs, thus giving them an annual revenue of rupees 3,500 crores. These revenue that are earned from the farmers are then given back to them as subsidies in the form of electricity subsidy and all. This plays a very important role in the voting dynamics and state politics. All politicians love to provide subsidy to the poor farmers. That's one of the best way to get votes during election. Hence, the politicians tax the farmers in the mandis and then return a part of the money as subsidy. The poor farmers don't understand this politics. They need the subsidy as they are poor, and the politicians love the popularity that they get while giving various kinds of subsidies. Hence, the Punjab government wants to showcase their support to the farmers. That's the reason Harsimrat Badal of the Shiromani Akali Dal resigned from the Modi cabinet. By relinquishing the cabinet post, Akali Dal want to gain the support and sympathy of the farmer. This is just a plain political stunt. They want the government to retain the MSP structure. However, the government says that they are not removing the MSP structures at all. Instead, the Farm Bill will allow the farmer to choose whether they want to sell their produce in the open market or in the local mandis. But despite all such guarantees from Narendra Modi and his cabinet ministers, protest continues as politics is the key ingredient of any reform. Do you remember all the howl and cry of the political parties in the 1990s when Dr. Manmohan Singh liberalized the Indian economy? In case you are a millennial, you are too young to follow political news in the 90s. However, that was the time I became very interested in politics. When Manmohan Singh removed all the red tape and demolished the entire license Raj in order to boost industrial production in India, all opposition parties such as CPM, Samajwadi Party, Bahujan Samajwadi Party, Lalu Yadav and others, they were up in arms against the government. Their main line of argument was that foreign companies will come to India and they will exploit the cheap labours in India. All the big leaders in the left such as Jyoti Basu, Harkishan Singh Surjit, Sitaram Yechuri, Lalu Yadav, Mulayam Singh Yadav, VP Singh, IK Gujral, Devi Lal and others fought against the economic reforms. All the labor unions that are affiliated with the left parties such as C2 Union and all, they called numerous all India strikes, railway strikes, transport strikes and so on. There were protests both inside and outside the parliament. There were marches, rallies, hunger strikes and whatnot. But what is the outcome of the liberalization program in the 90s? India, which was one of the poorest of countries, slowly and gradually became an economic superpower. American companies came in India. They invested in infrastructure, IT, electricity, power generation, petrochemical, cement, banks, financial institutions, electronic goods, mobile technology and all other sectors of the economy. This generated employment. This generated billions of dollars of export, and also it generated unprecedented economic growth. But have the politicians of our country learned any lesson from India's growth story? The answer is a big no. Even today, opposition leaders are doing the same thing that they did in the 90s. They are telling the people of India that as the government is trying to attract private players in our agricultural sector, private companies will now exploit the poor farmers. They can't see any positive in any reform. That is the reason Trinamool Congress, Akali Dal, Indian National Congress and all other parties are protesting against this bill, and they are telling the people that the Modi government is promoting the interest of big companies. Rahul Gandhi, who is totally against the Farm Bill, actually forgot that it was Indian National Congress that liberalized the entire Indian economy. But it is a shame of India that the same Indian National Congress are protesting against the liberalization of the agricultural sector in India today. My final take on the Farm Bill. Reform in the agricultural sector was pending since decades. Even though the software sector and all other sectors of India grew by leaps and bounds in the last 3 decades, the poor farmers suffered in pain. It's time to protect their interest by removing age-old systems such as the mandis and removing the middleman from the system. Let's hope that the poor farmers of our country will actually witness some increase in their income and see some hope in their life. That's it on the Farm Bill. I will meet you in the next episode with a new topic. Thank you. Good day.